Welcome to the deep dive. We take your source material and, we cut straight to the fascinating core of it.
That's the plan.
Today, we're venturing into the high design world of Singapore, specifically looking at its homes. We're guided by the book Sustainable Luxury, The New Singapore House, Solutions for a Livable Future.
And what immediately grabs you is that title, isn't it? Sustainable luxury. It sounds like a contradiction almost.
Right. Luxury and sustainability, do they even belong together?
That tension, I think that's really the starting point for our exploration today. It's kind of the core question.
Exactly. So our mission really in this deep dive is to understand how architects and clients too in Singapore are tackling that very question head on. We're going to see how they're innovating in how we live, especially given Singapore's unique situation. It's incredibly dense. It's got that tropical climate bringing specific challenges, and land is, well, let's just say it's expensive.
At a premium, yeah.
The book makes this pretty compelling case for Singapore being a real incubator of innovative residential design.
And we've got plenty of examples to look at.
Yeah, a diverse range, landed estates, apartments, all sorts of different approaches. We'll see if that incubator idea holds up.
And it's crucial to get this. Their approach to sustainability, it isn't just some superficial add-on, you know?
Right.
They're not just throwing a few bamboo countertops into a house that's otherwise, guzzling resources.
No, absolutely not. The book argues sustainability needs to be seen as a systemic challenge. It's not about isolated green bits and pieces. It's about how everything connects within the home, within its environment. The book puts it really well. It's not so much the particular materials that are used, but what is done with them.
That's the key. It's the application, the thinking behind it.
Exactly. The integration. That's what really counts.
And what's really insightful, I think, is how broadly they define sustainability. It's not just, trees and energy efficiency.
Yeah, it goes way beyond that.
It encompasses the whole habitus of the society, as they put it. Think of it like the entire way a society functions, its whole lifestyle.
Okay, so
Well, that includes the physical environment, obviously, climate stuff, but also language, cultural heritage, even collective memories. It's about fostering a community that thrives in the long run. What makes Singapore, Singapore?
That gives you a much richer picture, doesn't it? And they quote Leila Akaroglu and Liam Fennessy, who say, sustainability is the equity of social, economic, and environmental resources. It's finding that sweet spot.
That balance, which, highlights the need for really careful thought. And Akaroglu also points out, when you step back from the hype, sustainability is really about understanding and working with systems.
Right. Systems thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where architecture fits in. It has to respond to the immediate stuff the client's needs, the site, building codes, what an anthropologist like Malinowski called the immediate context. But also it has to connect with those bigger cultural forces, that wider context of the society.
So Singapore's own story, its development, that becomes a massive part of that wider context then. The book actually calls Singapore an ongoing experiment in sustainability, right from independence in '65.
Precisely. In those early days, they had hardly any natural resources, so the focus, it had to be economic sustainability, just survival, really.
Makes sense.
But as Singapore grew, that idea of sustainability broadened. It started to include housing and all those non-material things you need for a stable, healthy community. It became about quality of life, not just the economy.
And the economic growth has been just incredible. Now the most affluent country in the region.
Yeah, but that success brings its own sustainability issues, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, the growing population puts huge pressure on housing, affordability, availability.
Right.
It's a constant challenge.
As the government steps in.
They have to. They've regulated the expatriate workforce, ramped up public housing construction, trying to manage it all.
Which then causes other ripples, I guess, like longer waits for housing, maybe overcrowding.
Yeah, those are real concerns. And you have this situation where, yes, many people are quite wealthy.
Yeah.
The book mentions a surprising number with significant assets, but there's also a growing income gap. That's another sustainability challenge, a social one.
But the book also stresses Singapore's adaptability.
Oh, absolutely. That diversified economy, becoming a hub for finance, logistics, that wasn't luck. It was deliberate government strategy. Being able to adjust, that's key to their long-term sustainability.
And all these big socioeconomic currents, they inevitably shape the architecture, how people live.
They have to.
It makes you think more deeply about what home even means in this kind of place. The book mentions Roxana Watterson's work, The Living House. She argues architecture isn't just shelter.
No, it's much more. It creates social spaces, symbolic spaces. It literally shapes how people see the world and their place in it.
Wow.
Watterson says a home has this dual purpose. Physical security, yes, but also emotional, spiritual sustenance. It embodies values, beliefs. She contrasts traditional Southeast Asian houses, often on platforms, big roof focus, with Western ones, where walls enclose and support. Historically, Southeast Asian homes were often places for rituals, too, blurring daily life and the sacred.
And does that still echo today in modern Singaporean homes? Especially with the tropical climate.
You definitely see echoes. That strong link between inside and outside is often prioritized. Terraces, balconies, and even open bathrooms are becoming more popular.
Open bathrooms.
Yeah, the book points out it's not just a trend. It's actually a pretty practical way to fight mold in that humidity. Sensual indulgence meets pragmatism.
Oh, makes sense. And you mentioned that Matt Jamble house earlier, the windowless one.
Right, by Randy Chan. That's a really conscious look back at vernacular tradition. It's raised up, maximizing airflow, light, like those old stilt houses, the kampongs.
But space is still the big issue in Singapore. That indoor-outdoor connection must be hard to achieve sometimes.
It is, and that's where the government's garden state idea comes in. The push for public green spaces is partly to compensate for the lack of private gardens for many people.
Interesting trade-off.
But it creates this tension. You have the strong Asian cultural emphasis on family, community, but also this increasing modern desire for personal space in the home and out in the city, too. It's a real balancing act.
So how are architects dealing with that? High-density living.
In some really smart ways, you see a lot of focus on maximizing views in apartments, trying to create that feeling of openness even high up.
And plants.
Lots of plants. Vertical greenery, green walls, planted terraces, trying to weave nature back into the dense urban fabric. Even the HDB, the Public Housing Authority, is rethinking layouts for multi-generational living. They have to adapt.
It goes back to that Watterson quote. Inhabited spaces are never neutral. They're all cultural constructions. Homes mean something.
They absolutely do. But the book points out this potential friction. Architects sometimes have a tendency to over-design, maybe impose their ideas of meaning.
Instead of the residents.
Exactly. Which ultimately isn't really sustainable, is it? If the space doesn't resonate with the people living there.
So the trend is more towards collaboration.
Yes, the book really celebrates that shift, a move towards genuine partnership between architect and client. So the homes truly reflect the lives and values of the inhabitants.
Like that practice, eco.ide.
Right. They're mentioned as specifically focusing on projects where there's this natural empathy, this deep collaboration between architect and client. It's a different way of working.
So it's less about the architect dictating, more about a conversation.
A really intense personal conversation, yeah. Driven by shared goals around the environment, personal needs, cultural meaning. It's a new kind of paradigm.
And the book hammers this home. For Singapore, sustainability isn't just like a bonus feature, it's an imperative.
It absolutely is. Non-negotiable, really. Environmentally, that means things like being super careful with water, managing aircon use, limiting private cars, squeezing the most out of every bit of land.
And that ties into social sustainability, too.
Directly. You need affordable public transport, good communal amenities, things that make high-density living work well for everyone. It's all connected.
And then there's family. Still hugely important in Singapore.
Hugely. But designing for the extended family is tricky when culture itself is changing. How do you accommodate everyone's needs now?
Plus, the cost. Younger people struggle to afford homes.
Definitely. The book touches on that, the booming resale market for public housing, even people commuting from Malaysia. These are responses to those pressures.
And you see different kinds of households now, too.
Yeah, more single people, couples without kids, expats. They all have different needs. So you get developments like the Cranes, Wanton Residences, Green Collection. They're experimenting with new models, trying to find that balance between privacy and community for these newer demographics.
That tension again. Privacy versus community.
It seems to be a central theme, doesn't it? Especially in tropical Southeast Asian design. And the book argues that getting that balance right is absolutely crucial for Singapore's sustainable future.
The book uses specific houses to really illustrate all this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe we can touch on a few. That Matt Jamble house again. the windowless one.
Yeah, Randy Chan's design. It's fascinating how it reinterprets tradition, raising it up for cooling, like a kampong house, but uses recycled timber, a biopool filtration system, solar panels. It's got this almost theatrical quality, connecting back to older ways of living, but with modern tech.
Very cool. And the Namely Drive house, 2 homes in one.
That's Chang Architects. A great example of designing for both family interaction and individual privacy. There's this central water garden that cools the air naturally.
Nice.
And the front is very solid, private, but inside it opens right up. Very clever response to the site.
Okay, and high-rises. The Olive Apartments.
W Architects, really innovative. They have these sky terraces that link pairs of apartments.
Sky terraces.
Yeah, shared green spaces, way up high. It fosters community and gives people that feeling of having outdoor space, almost like a landed house, but in an apartment tower. Pretty amazing.
Wow. What about the Andrew Road house? Multi-generational.
A D-Lab designed that one. It features this sunken garden courtyard, great for dealing with noise, creating privacy. It really hits multiple sustainability points. Economic, social, personal, environmental. Even the screened timber bridge for private access shows that careful thought about connection and separation.
And the Coral house. That sounds very tropical.
Guz Architects. That one really dissolves the boundaries between inside and out. The garden just flows through it, even up onto rooftop gardens. It's all about connecting with nature. They even deliberately tuck the TV away to encourage, other kinds of engagement.
Interesting choice. How about the Belmont Roadhouse?
That's CSYA. It's described as a company house, like for corporate use, but it riffs on the classic colonial black and white bungalow style. So it's about cultural continuity, history, alongside the environmental stuff.
And the architect's own home. The Bamboo Curtain House.
Right, Eco.id Architects, Sim Boon Yang's place. It's basically his design philosophy made real, using bamboo as this beautiful, sustainable screen. Plus all the eco features. Solid walls for coolness, open design for breezes, water harvesting, solar. And it weaves in cultural sustainability, too, with collected artifacts. It's like a living manifesto.
Even renovating older public housing counts, right? The Dakota apartment.
Absolutely. Jonathan Pau's project. With housing costs so high, sustainably renovating older HDB flats like that is becoming really important. Adaptive reuse, creating modern spaces within the existing city.
Makes sense. And finally, co-living. The Cranes.
Yeah, Experience Design Studio and ONG. That's specifically designed to build community, shared kitchens, lounges, etc. It's trying to find that sweet spot between having your own private space and being part of a collective, especially in a dense city. It addresses those changing demographics we talked about.
So wrapping this up, after this deep dive, it feels pretty clear that sustainable luxury in Singapore, it's not an oxymoron after all.
Not at all. It's a very real thing. An evolving approach, really, driven by understanding those unique pressures, environmental, social, economic, in that specific place.
Yeah, you really see how sustainability becomes this multi-layered concept. It's materials, yes, but also how a design responds to climate, how it supports community, respects culture, allows for personal well-being. It's all interconnected.
Absolutely. It's about quality of life, ultimately.
And the creativity is just striking.
Yeah.
Adapting old ideas, integrating new tech, all aimed at making these spaces not just livable, but meaningful.
Truly innovative stuff.
It leaves you with a thought, doesn't it? How might these principles we've seen in Singapore, balancing density and nature, community and privacy, tradition and modernity, how could they apply elsewhere, in other cities around the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. It makes you think about your own living space, your own community. How could these ideas inform how we design and live wherever we are? Something to mull over.